Hey y'all, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who may or may not already know, my name is Alex, aka YELLOOBERRY.
I'm like, damn, you so fine, girl, what is your sign? She say I'm a Sagittarius, I'm a Capricorn, the beginning and end. I got a friend for your friend, hey, I'm making all of this money to spend. Deal stores buying.
Hey, I don't bite.
And as you can see by the title, today is June 19th, 2020, and I just want to wish everyone a happy Juneteenth. We are sick and tired of not being recognized. We celebrate July 4th, we celebrate Columbus Day, we celebrate all these other holidays that do not represent us, if you know what I'm saying. So due to all the current events that have been happening with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and a whole list of other people, not just within this year but since forever, we have decided that, you know, June 19th, we really need to make a stance. I do know that June 19th, aka Juneteenth, has been celebrated in a lot of other places, but it isn't a national holiday, and it isn't a holiday that a lot of people recognize, especially people of color. I've actually had some friends and family members who didn't even know what Juneteenth was. So this is going to be the video where we discuss all things Juneteenth, what it is, what happened, what's the history behind it, and what can we do to start celebrating. So let's jump into it. Everything that I'm going to be reading to you about Juneteenth is going to be from online sources. I'm going to link them all down below so that you also have the liberty to go on there and rummage through the page and see what you want to read. And if I miss any points, you have it there to read for yourself. So let's start with, what is Juneteenth? According to the New York Times, on June 19, 1865, about 2 months after the Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox, Virginia, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, to inform enslaved African Americans of their freedom and that the Civil War has ended. General Granger's announcement put into effect the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued more than 2.5 years earlier on January 4th, 1863 by President Abraham Lincoln. So, in other words, technically, Juneteenth is the day that Texas slaves were freed. They did not know that 2 years prior to, they have been freed. Isn't that crazy? That's mind-boggling to me. Again, there's a whole lot of history because a lot of people are misinformed. They think that today is the day that slaves were freed, and it truly wasn't. Another resource that I found really good is from pbs.org. The name of this article is "What is Juneteenth?" The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore, existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. So pretty much, these slaves were advised that you can stay with your slave owners. You will not be considered a slave only because you will be compensated for the work that you're doing now. So basically, they could be doing all this hard labor as long as their prior slave owner is throwing them a penny or something. It's not called enslavement, it's called labor. Something else I want to also add is that, so another fact is, when Major General Gordon Granger issued the above order, he had no idea that in establishing the Union's Army's authority over the people of Texas, he was also establishing the basis for a holiday, Juneteenth. Today, the most popular annual celebration of emancipation from slavery in the United States. After all, by the time Granger assumed command of the Department of Texas, the Confederate capital in Richmond had fallen. The executive to whom he referred, President Lincoln, was dead, and the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery was well on its way to ratification. But Granger wasn't just a few months late. The Emancipation Proclamation itself, ending slavery in the Confederacy, at least on paper, had taken effect 2.5 years before, and in the interim, close to 200,000 black men had enlisted in the fight. I did not know this. Again, I believe that today was a day that black people were freed from enslavement. And I know it might sound a little crazy because I do remember like hearing about the Civil War when I was back in grade school and stuff like that, but social studies was never my strong suit. So it's just amazing to really look back and understand my history. So now I just want to give you 6 facts that I learned about Juneteenth. Starting with battlefield.org. Fact number 1. The Civil War was fought between the northern and the southern states from 1861 to 1865. So for those of you who do not know exactly what the Civil War is, let me just get into that a little bit. The American Civil War was fought between the United States of America and the Confederate States of America, a collection of 11 southern states that left the Union in 1860 and 1861. The conflict began primarily as a result of the long-standing disagreement over the institution of slavery. On February 9, 1861, Jefferson Davis, a former U.S. Senator and Secretary of War, was elected President of the Confederate States of America by the members of the Confederate Constitutional Convention. After 4 bloody years of conflict, the United States defeated the Confederate States. In the end, the states that were in rebellion were readmitted to the United States, and the institution of slavery was abolished nationwide. I think that is literally crazy. Like, the United States was literally segregated north and south just simply because the Confederate States didn't want to be a part of the United States because they wanted to keep slavery alive. That is really crazy to me. The second fact, the issues of slavery and sexual power divided the United States, as I just kind of explained to you guys already. Fact number 3, the North won the Civil War. After 4 years of conflict, the major Confederate army surrendered to the United States in April of 1865 at Appomattox Courthouse and Bennett Place. The war bankrupted much of the South, left its roads, farms, and factories in ruins, and all but wiped out an entire generation of men who wore the blue and the gray. More than 620,000 men died in the Civil War, more than any other war in American history. The southern states were occupied by Union soldiers, rebuilt, and gradually readmitted to the United States over the course of 20 difficult years known as the Reconstruction Era. And this other fact that I want to give you guys from this, the fourth fact would be, after the war was over, the Constitution was amended to free the slaves, to assure equal protection under the law for American citizens, and to grant black men the right to vote. So, my fellow black friends, families, and everybody else in between, it is a right for us to vote. There was a time where we were not able to vote, where we were not even considered humans. So this year we need to start buckling down and getting into these polls, especially with the president that we have in office right now. So during the war, Abraham Lincoln freed some slaves and allowed freedmen to join the Union Army as United States colored troops. It was clear to many that it was only a matter of time before slavery would be abolished. As the war drew to a close, but before the southern states were readmitted to the United States, the northern states added the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. The amendments are also known as the Civil War Amendments. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. The 14th Amendment guaranteed that citizens would receive equal protection under the law, which we really not getting right now still. And the 15th Amendment granted black men the right to vote. The 14th Amendment has played an ongoing role in American society as different groups of citizens continue to lobby for equal treatment by the government. So guys, now that we are learning so much, like, what are we gonna do with this information? And if you're like me, I know you're wondering, what happened to all the slaves? Because America just, things ain't that easy, you know? Yes, you say I'm free, but again, it took you 2 years to let us know that we were free. And then on top of that, like, we're free and, like, we got our reparations? Of course not. So, this fact states, not all enslaved people were freed instantly. Texas is a large state, and General Granger's order were slow to spread. Go figure. Bet you if they wanted some tax money, though, everybody would know. Everybody and their mama would know. According to historian James Smallwood, many enslavers deliberately suppressed the information until after the harvest, and some beyond that. In July 1867, there were 2 separate reports of enslaved people being freed, and 1 report of a Texas horse thief named Alex Simpson, whose enslaved people were only freed after his hanging in 1868. Another fact, freedom created other problems. Despite the announcement, Texas slave owners weren't too eager to part with what they felt was their property. Excuse me. When freed people tried to leave, many of them were beaten, lynched, or murdered. They would catch free slaves swimming across the Sabine River and shoot them. That is just so, it's so heartbreaking to me. And I see a lot of these same acts happening now, you know? The Juneteenth flag is full of symbolism. I'm going to insert a picture right here so you guys know what the Juneteenth flag is. Juneteenth flag designer L.J. Graff packed lots of meaning into her design. The colors red, white, and blue echo the American flag to symbolize that the enslaved people and their descendants were Americans. The star in the middle pays homage to Texas, while the bursting new star on the horizon of the red and blue fields represents a new freedom and a new people. So these are all facts that I didn't really know too much about Juneteenth prior to doing my research. And I feel a bit liberated because, again, Sankofa, you have to know where you're coming from to know where you're headed. So I feel like finally, like, I know a little bit something about myself besides the fact that we were enslaved and, of course, what's happening right now. It's nice to get a little bit of history and say, okay, so this is the things that we're not going to repeat. This is why certain things are still happening today. And it kind of jogs my brain to feel like, okay, what can we do differently as Black people together? So now, why I've decided to celebrate Juneteenth this year, as y'all know, your girl is pregnant. So I just really wanted to make sure that my daughter and my future kids know about themselves. I know they're going to go to school. They're going to learn about the Christopher Columbuses and the George Washingtons and how prestigious these white men were, when we all know they was murderers and killers and slave owners and stuff like of that nature. So it's just kind of like, I don't want to raise another generation that is lost, that doesn't know anything about themselves, that's going to have that wow moment that I had at the age of, what, 21, 22, when I had Africana Studies class, not knowing about my history. I do feel like it is very important that my children and the next generation that I grow up, I instill this knowledge in them so that they can take it and they can do what they need to do with it and make their generations better. So now for the fun part. What will I be doing today to celebrate Juneteenth? This is my first Juneteenth, like the most of you guys. And I decided that I'm going to take today to, one, educate myself. So besides the research that I have spoken to you guys about just now, I am going to have more conversations with my boyfriend because, as I said, we're doing this together for our future generations and as well as to educate ourselves. And we're just going to exchange information, exchange what we learned, exchange what we found out, and stuff like that. I just feel like it is very important to really understand what's going on. Yes, I want to celebrate. I can't drink because clearly I'm pregnant. But I just feel like there's more to it than just going out barbecuing and drinking. Like, we really need to understand why we're going out barbecuing and drinking. Something else I want to do is to, again, have meaningful conversations, not just with my boyfriend, but with people on Instagram. I want to see what y'all on Instagram are doing. How are you guys celebrating? What are the facts that you guys found out about today? I've learned a lot on social media, not just about Juneteenth, but just in general. You know, I have a very unique set of people on my social media. It's just not about aesthetic and things like that. I have people that really want to learn. They're eager to learn, and they're eager to share information. So I'll be spending my day doing that, only because my boyfriend's at work. So I'm just keeping myself occupied until he gets home and we do our own thing. The second thing that I have decided to do besides educate myself are to watch a movie. The 4 movies that I have chosen, I'm going to actually let Caleb figure out which one he wants to watch because he's like the movie picker. Is Detroit 13th. You can find that on Netflix. So Detroit is on Amazon Prime. I believe it's $4 to rent. And the next movie is 13th. It's a Netflix documentary. I believe I did watch this before, but I don't mind watching it again. LA 92 is also on Netflix, and the Malcolm X movie on Netflix. Those are 4 movie choices that you guys can choose from. If you have any more music choices, please put it down in the comment box below. I would love to keep learning, you know, and see different experiences and see different stories. Lastly, I decided, just on a lighthearted note, at the end of all of this and the movies and watching all this heavy stuff and learning all this heavy stuff, I decided that we could probably play this phone game named YELLOOBERRY. Somebody from my Instagram recommended that game to me. It's like a game of heads up, and it's on your cell phone. You hold it up and it'll have different categories like Black movies, Black shows. There are certain packages within the app that you do have to pay for. It's like $1 or $2. So that's up to your discretion if you want to pay for those or not. But it does seem like a fun game that you could play with family, and like really into some Black culture that's just not about rape, enslavement, and just all the heavy stuff like I said. But please, guys, enlighten me. Every year, I definitely want to step it up a notch. Please let me know down in the comments section below, what are you doing today to celebrate Juneteenth? What else have you learned about Juneteenth that I haven't covered? I want to make sure that you guys enjoy your Juneteenth, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.